this has probably been going on for a while and it's just now catching attention. But publicly and notably starting with Steam and itch.io in the last few weeks. Moriarty, I think out of the four of us, you are the most versed on this. Would you like to set this up a little bit for someone like, say, JTart9 in the audience who does not know what is happening?
Sure. So there is a group, a activist group in Australia, and they are an anti-porn group called Collective Shout. And this this political lobbyist organization exists in order to remove porn from the internet. They have issues mostly with incest and rape porn, but they want all porn gone. They're, moralizing in that way. And what they've done is they have sent out a whole bunch of open letters, and they've organized and done a whole bunch of phone calls and lobbying to various organizations in order to remove anything that they think is pornography. One of those groups that they went to was Steam, and Steam basically told them to kick rocks because Steam will not allow anything to be taken off. They don't do that. They don't censor anything. This was the thing that they did years ago. It used to be that you couldn't get porn on Steam. Now you can, right? And part of that whole process was, we are just not going to censor this. We're going to be an open platform. We're going to allow whatever you want on here. And if people don't like it, then just don't buy it. And I think that's a very fair way to do it. Which I think maybe is a little bit of biasing the audience here, and I apologize for that. Before I tell you the rest of the information, I didn't mean to just bias you immediately. Anyways, they have gone and decided to do an end run around Steam by going to Visa, MasterCard, and Stripe. And they went to them and they convinced Visa, MasterCard, and Stripe to not allow this to be used on their payments. Right? So if it is a game that has certain kinds of porn in it, most notably, again, incest and rape porn, then you cannot process a payment for that. Now, Steam doesn't tell Visa, MasterCard, or Stripe what you're buying. They just say, here's a package, here's a product, X number of dollars, right? So, because they can't say what that product is, Visa, MasterCard, and Stripe told Steam, if you don't remove these products from your storefront, we won't allow you to do any payment processing because any of it could be this bad porn that we don't like.
Yeah.
Right? Then they followed this up by also going after Itch, which is the largest indie game seller. It's the largest third party.
That's right.
And they went after Itch and they said, Itch, you have this, stuff. We want you to do it. Remove it. Now, the way that Itch did it is they removed all not safe for work games entirely. Right.
So that wouldn't even include porn and stuff like that.
They removed anything that has an NSFW tag. It was removed and it was deleted completely. Gone.
Oh, that's messed
forever. Now, if you're on Steam, you can still download these port games because you bought them. Right? But if you own them on Itch, they're gone from your library forever. They're just gone because of this particular group that's doing it. So, since everybody is saying that we need to release the files, I've been hearing this a lot. We need to release the files all the time. People are saying release the files. I agree. We need to release these porn files from the clutches of Visa and MasterCard and Stripe because they shouldn't be holding them hostage.
I'm on board. I like it.
I think so. I will provide a quick blip of context maybe for non-American people or people who don't really keep up, right? Visa and MasterCard, at least as of this 2024 article, accounted for 90% of all payment processing outside of China.
Yes.
So if they say we will not process your payments,
90% of payments are now not being processed. Yep.
They have a lot of power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a huge deal.
Is Stripe like Discover? Or is that an Aussie specific one?
No, Stripe is an online payment processor, sort of like a lot of other ones. Xsola, PayPal, stuff like that. Right.
Oh, okay, so something like that.
They're that group. Stripe has become a lot larger. They partnered up with Klarna, and they partnered up with Afterpay and like the Pay in 4 groups that are going. The buy now, pay later groups that are all going to go absolutely bankrupt. Don't put your money into these whatsoever. If you're an investor, please.
I was going to say, isn't
not
Klarna
investment
like
advice, but
right
don't
now?
ever do it. Yeah, it's a terrible thing, but it's not the point. So they're part of that group, right? Like, and they kind of managed to get their foothold into that. So they're in a lot of like e-commerce, right? So like my merch store runs and allows you to use Stripe as well as a PayPal or a Visa or a MasterCard, right? So it's a separate thing. Stripe typically works by also just using your Visa or MasterCard. So it's a little, I don't know, kind of unfair to call it a separate thing, but it's it is.
Okay, yeah. Pretty much.
So yes, 90%.
Yeah.
Don't like that.
Man, that is a weird. I mean, I remember when Steam wasn't allowing porn. Period. I remember when that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it, like, I guess it then reverted, and now it's weird to see that it's kind of going back, not of their own accord, which I kind of don't agree with.
Well, they're not,
because, like,
I think they're not removing it of their wish, right? Like, I don't think Steam would do this. I think that if Visa said, "Oh, sorry," right, like Steam would put them back up immediately. I feel that Valve has shown many, many times that they are exceptionally libertarian about this, right? Mm-hmm. They don't feel that they should be the ones making decisions about what can and can't be sold, which is why they allowed porn in the first. It's why. So, like, a lot of people have a problem with, please, I'm not moralizing, right? But a lot of people have a problem with things like incest and rape porn, right? Like, they look and they go, that's something that you shouldn't have a fetish about, right? Mm-hmm. That you shouldn't find sexually appealing. And if you don't and other people do, should you have the right to go and, stop them from being able to buy that? Or, let's say you take it further and say lolly or cub porn, right? Should people be allowed to do that? Well, it's this, disgusting thing, but is it, should you be allowed to do it? Or you could take it even more gentle and say, well, what about LGBTQ plus stuff? That is, socially sexualized, right?
Well, isn't that exactly what's happening on Itch?
It is, and that's where I was going to say.
Oh,
so Itch,
sorry, I didn't mean to ruin it.
Itch ended up removing, because NSFW, right, a huge amount of LGBTQ plus stuff.
I was going to say, when you said NSFW stuff on Itch, I'm like, well, that doesn't exclusively mean porn.
Correct. Yeah.
Because that like NSFW doesn't explicitly mean porn.
Correct.
Porn just falls underneath that umbrella. So I feel like just a lot of things got like caught in the crossfire there.
Yes. Yeah. So like, just because something has to do with sexuality too, right? Like, sexuality doesn't necessarily mean sexual. So imagine some of the games that exist that are out there because they, deal with queer identity, right? And they're things that are saying, hey, look, this is about sexuality, and therefore, it's not safe for work. You shouldn't be playing this thing. Or maybe it's dealing with, there's a lot of games that deal with sexual orientation and suicide. That is not safe for work.
Absolutely not safe for work.
Now it gets pulled off the game. Like, I think that is... I feel like I need you guys to have an opinion about it a lot more than me, because my opinion is definitely like, this is bad, right? Like, and I can definitely just go off for a while about how this is bad.
Well, and also
I feel like it's also weird. Sorry, you go.
Yeah, take that, Justin. There is if you are keeping up with this, you're familiar with this. There is the idea of the slippery slope, which we've kind of expanded upon there. Like, one of the notable games that came out, there's a demo for a game called Consume Me, which is about like anorexia and like that kind of view of self and that issue with that, right? I can't speak very well to that because frankly I don't know a lot about it, but it was removed because I think it was categorized as an NSFW thing, because it is like a more like serious theme. I think the presentation of that game is kind of lighter, but to offset and work with what it's tackling, right? That was caught in the crossfire of this, and then it just becomes a thing of like, well, maybe your first blush when you see something like this is like, oh, that's about a weird kink thing. Well, who cares? But then for the groups that are pushing this, it quickly becomes like, okay, well, is it any sexual content? Like, if a boob is shown, are you not allowed to buy it anymore? If there is murder, which is bad in the game, and then some groups well, that promotes murder, I don't think that should be sold. And then suddenly like 90% of video games are not purchasable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like
This stuff escalates pretty quickly, right?
like Mario crushes a Goomba. That's murder of wildlife. Like PETA is going to be all over you for that. Like,
It's true.
is that where we draw the line?
Dude, I'll
like,
tell you. Do you remember that those like flash games that PETA used to do?
oh my
like,
god, yeah.
Those are going to come back in style. I'm telling you.
So
If Flash existed still, yes.
I guess
My view is with you, for the record, Moriarty. I'm very much like,
Especially on the
I don't
itch
like it.
side, because itch was always meant to be like
open.
no DSRM. It's open. Like it's just a platform for you to sell.
DSRM. That's what I'm recording this on.
DSLR was mentioned in the pre-show.
DSLR
for Justin's,
DRM.
to come to his defense.
DRM.
DRM.
Yeah,
digital rights
I'm combining two things. Yeah, but itch was meant to be the one with no DRM. It was meant to be the one that was open, meant to just be a platform that you could buy things and then download them.
And
to
you can
your
get them for
computer.
free too, right? Like you can pay what you want and all kind of stuff like
People
that.
would
There's
just be
other
like, yeah,
things
name a
like
price,
to
whatever you
express
want to
yourself.
pay for it.
Yeah.
And if you're not allowed to do that on itch, you can't do it on anywhere.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, there's been a lot of other things. So, for example, one of the things that has been removed from itch specifically. Go ahead.
I was like, also going down the slippery slope again. Does this mean like you like on adult websites, if you wanted to pay for like a premium, you can't use a Visa, MasterCard, or Stripe? Like if you want to subscribe to OnlyFans?
That's a whole different story. Because a lot of the times, no, there is a reason why Patreon doesn't allow you to do porn content, right? There are a whole bunch of and OnlyFans at one point was going to ban it too. There's a whole bunch of issues with this, and typically this is why they charge 40 to 50% as a fee for adult content. So I feel, boy, maybe we should have had a discussion about this off the podcast, because there is a certain amount of this that gets, like, once we start talking about this particular issue, it starts to become very political, right? And it starts to become kind of modern politics, which is something that we generally avoid. But the group that's behind this is called Collective Shout, like I mentioned. They are a nonprofit that mostly focuses on anti-pornography, anti-prostitution, anti-abortion, conservatism, Christian conservatism, right? And they start becoming this kind of exceptionally right-wing group. And you can see that the slippery slope does exist there, but it's a slippery slope that, people who are conservative don't really mind so much. And we generally don't talk about politics.
For the greater good.
We don't talk about politics too much here on the podcast, but I think that there is a certain amount of there's a certain amount of talking about this that, like, you inevitably do talk about that, which is why would so there's a game called No Mercy, right? And this game is the poster child of the current Steam removals, right? Whenever you talk about, well, they removed games, they go, well, yeah, but look at this one, right? This is the bad game. No Mercy, this is the bad game. And it is a game where, and for anybody who has any sort of traumas, maybe you stop listening here. This is a game where you play as a man who rapes his stepmother. And then it is, shown to you. And then you also do this to your sisters and cousins and stuff, right?
Was that the game that had Willem Dafoe in it?
I don't think so. No, this is like a
what
super
game had
indie
Willem
thing.
Dafoe in it?
There was some controversial game that had Willem Dafoe as an actor in it, and it was
this is
it turns
brand
out that
new.
he did something really screwed up.
No, this is brand new.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, like,
What's the premise of that game?
The Willem Dafoe game? I don't know.
No. The one you're talking about, No Mercy.
No Mercy.
Is that like what kind of game is that? Is it like a walking sim?
It's more like a visual novel, right?
Okay.
So, like, you have things where you are making choices, and then you see the actions of your choice, and it's not necessarily going to be a video, but it's going to be, pornographic, and some part of it will be a video, some parts of it are just slides.
Oh, I see the game now. Jesus.
Right. And you can Google this if you want, like you'll see it. But the point is that it's shown as the poster child for why you shouldn't have these games. Because look, you are choking and raping and violently aggressing, family members for sexual gratification, which most people find disgusting, right? And therefore, look, this is such a terrible thing. You shouldn't feel bad that we're not removing good games. We're removing these evil, terrible, bad things. But once you start looking at it from the lens of a far right-wing, anti-abortion, hard conservative Christian viewpoint, you realize that this is an ingress, right? This is a starting point. This is a beachhead. It is the easy place to say, look, this is gross. You don't want this, right? You don't want to kill a baby that's 9 months, right? Like, that's okay. You don't want abortion at 9 months, right? Well, now you don't want it at 7 months.
My mind went to parallels with early 2000s gay panic.
Right. It's all part of the same sort of thing. And this is why generally we don't talk politics here, because it inevitably spirals, right? It all becomes connected. But it is part of that story, right? This is the same sort of thing where the people who did this collective shout, they were the ones who were responsible for boycotting Tyler, the Creator, because he's a misogynist, right? And it's like, there are a whole lot of white raptors out there, but you went after the black one. And there's a certain amount of politics associated with that, for better or worse.
And to expand on that point about the specific game being used, I was looking at reactions over this over the last week, and due to games like that being, front and center in the discussion, right? You see this come up, and even people who would otherwise not be for this broadly, putting that game aside, since that game is the centerpiece of the discussion, it's like, well, yeah, they should get rid of this. This is good actually if it's getting stuff like that, but it is catching so much else right now.
Everything else,
before we even getting to where it could go, right?
Yeah.
And even with this, the itch thing was 8 or 9 p.m. East Coast on a Friday or something. I don't think they even had time to communicate to creators
that it was going down.
Yeah, it happened, and then the statement came at 1 or 2 a.m. that night of what was going on.
Yeah, that's rough, because not only now are you messing with people on Steam and stuff like that, and it's okay, Steam's doing this because it's gotten pressure from Visa and Mastercard and Stripe, but then you also are well, now you have to think about creators who are just making a game based on their experiences in life, and now their work is being affected by this.
Because I will give you the other side of this. I'll give you the other side of this immediately, which is that some of the content that was removed was things like domestic violence recovery, right? So how to get out of it, and what it feels like to be, in a domestic violent relationship. That stuff is also considered to be, sexual, because there is sexual violence that happens in this. And once you start talking about, you can't have any rape games, then you also can't have any anti-rape games. And they were removed too.
That is a perspective that I feel like I should have thought of, but I did not.
And that's kind of where this gets a lot of traction, because you hear about the game that was mentioned a minute ago with all the awful things, right? And you're like, okay, well, makes sense. But then you dig past the surface of what the major players are being expressed here, right? And you're like, wait, hold on. This is a lot far more encompassing than you are being told right up front.
It's immediately just jumping out to me as so now you have to have someone manually look at every single game marked NSFW.
No, you just remove all of them, and then they win.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the easiest way to. That's the easiest way to work as a corporation or as a company. That's the easiest way to do it. Just broad stroke, boom, problem solved. I can still make my payments through Visa.
Yes.
But the correct way of doing it would be more like moderation via a normal, a human, and then you have to also train that human into looking for the specific thing that you're trying to get rid of.
Mhm.
And that thing will be subjective because it's, well, what is sexual in nature? Like, what is being talked about? Like, a game that jumped into my head is a Doki Doki Literature Club. Is that gone?
And would it be,
be,
right? Because there is violence against women, arguably, in that. And the thing is, so this is not a discussion that we're going to come away.
There's violence against women? Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I was thinking of Hunipop. Okay, never mind.
I mean, Hunipop sexual,
Hunipop's
it's gone too.
Yeah, that's gone.
Yeah, that's definitely
Right?
gone.
So, but, oh God, you totally threw off my
I'm so
train
sorry.
there.
Because you confused Doki Doki Literature Club with Honeypop.
I can respond to something Justin said while you compose yourself there. And like to flesh out that point even more, Justin, Itch has like 10 people, I think, working for it. So
There's not a person that works at Itch, because does Itch even make money off of sales and stuff like that?
Yes.
I'd say
They
so,
make it
yeah.
off of tips. Yeah.
Yeah.
Off of
because
tips, so they don't like skim us up. They don't skim a piece off the top,
I
like
think
I
there's a
imagine Steam
slider
does.
that you can choose how much Itch gets, perhaps. So it's, but basically to
Got
the
it.
point, right? Like when this initial de-indexing happened, it was like 12,000 and then SFW games just. Now imagine,
Snap.
there's probably the leader, right? PR person, engineering for the website and stuff.
The leader.
2 or 3 people going through 12,000 things to see if they fit these new content guidelines they've put out in the wake
It's
of
not
this.
happening. This is not happening.
And even with Steam is like 400 people, but so many of those people are developers and stuff. Like, I don't think they'd have a lot of space for this either. And they have such a huge volume in comparison to sift through if they were to theoretically do the same thing. So to your point, is
It's just a slippery slope, and
Right. And the thing is, so outside of the just kind of generic slippery slope argument, because people will always say, oh, there's a slippery slope, and people go, well, okay, but how far do you want to take it?
I was like, does that mean you do nothing? Is the question.
Right.
Yeah.
How far do you want to take it? And there is sort of, in my point of view, right, there's 2 ways to look at it, which is that you can either look at it like the American justice system is supposed to be, which is we would rather let a single innocent person go, right, than let a single guilty person go, than send a single innocent person to jail, right? Or the way it actually works, which is that we will send innocent people to jail because we want to punish guilt so much, right? And that is where it feels you need to look at this sort of a situation. And there is no answer, right? Like, we're not going to come up with an answer because each one's highly personal, right? It is incredibly nuanced. It is a thing that ties into societal issues and identity and how far and how much you're willing. Do you think it's okay? And at what point is it not, right? Are you okay with a game that has fictionalized violence like a rape? Are you okay with a game that has fictionalized sex with children? Right? Like, at what point is it acceptable and at what point is it not? And at what point do you say, well, we're not going to support this, but we'll support this because it's on the side of this arbitrary line that we've decided? And really the question is putting that line, on this huge, massive spectrum and saying, well, we're going to carve that part out and we're going to carve this part out and say those are bad, right? We're going to say that, feet is an okay kink, but not furry, right? That's bad. You can't have and we're gonna say that gay is okay and lesbian's okay, but trans are bad, but queer is all right. Bisexuals, they don't even exist, right? Like you're kind of getting
Just
into
pick
this
a side, man.
Right, you're getting into this really, very complicated discussion that goes way beyond just video games. And this is why it's so very difficult to talk about. And so, like, there are a lot of people, even in our audience, who would maybe consider themselves to be very, I'm open and whatever, I'm progressive. And they would say, but game about rape, that's not, you can't make a rape joke, right? There's no rape joke that can be funny. It can't happen. Because it is about rape, it could never be funny, right? You can't do that. There is no racist joke that could ever be funny. You can't make a racist joke because you've crossed the line, right? There's no case where you can say these things or do these things ever. And then there's going to be people who are on the entire opposite side who are going to say, well, rape is, you can't have that either because of this. And so you've got, this thing where it's not one or the other, and it's not, whatever. It's all highly personalized on these incredibly broad spectrums, and it's really difficult. It's a really complicated thing. And so where do you lie is going to be very personal.
Yeah.
But I would say maybe where it can loop back around to where pretty much all of us could agree, Visa and MasterCard probably shouldn't get to be the arbiters, whether intentionally or as a byproduct of that.
Yes,
right?
and that is actually the crux of it, right? Because I agree with you. I think that is the part of the argument that we can have where we say, okay, sure, the discussion still needs to be had as to whether or not it can or can't. But
why is Visa and MasterCard getting into this?
Right. They shouldn't be the ones who arbitrarily decide on their own with absolutely no one else saying, Steam doesn't get to decide. Itch doesn't get to decide. The law doesn't get to decide.
Yeah.
We decide. And that is absolutely right.
Check.
Nobody but shareholders. Right?
Because going back to like what I was saying earlier is, if you can't talk about these things on a platform like Itch that is actively built on, we're going to make this for people who are creatives and are going to put their thing out, and we just want them to have a platform to put their stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't do it there, where can you do it?
On your own website, distributing it for free until someone takes an issue with it and comes after you personally? ?
Yeah, until the person
can't have it on your ISP.
Until the company
have it on your
hosting the
ISP,
website decides, hey, actually, we don't want to host this.
You can't host it. You can't do it. No, you can't. Oh, you're sending it over my network. You can't do that either. That is the part of the slippery slope where people go, well, it'll never get that bad. Right? It would never get that bad. Oh, it would never get that bad. Oh, it would never get that bad. No, never. No. Everybody is reasonable, right? Everybody's reasonable, and we all, we use common sense, and we know it would never get that bad.
And also, you can't, I feel like you also lose a lot of like the ability to get your product out there if you're not on something like an Itch, because how are you going to, you're just going to market like a random shady URL? When it's an Itch link, you're going to somewhere safe and secure.
Mm-hmm. And, yeah, I think my position is very clear, right? Like, my position is there should not be at all, really. It's not their place, right? There's no case where Visa or MasterCard should ever be able to come in and say you can't sell this. And I think that is true across all. I think that they should not be the ones who are saying anything about adult services whatsoever. I don't think they should be going after people who are selling stuff for prostitution. I don't think that's their place, right? I don't think that's Visa and MasterCard's place. Their place is to charge 1.5% and make the deal go through, and that is it.
Yeah. Especially
it's
because
kind of where they're...
I imagine they operate with transactions outside of America, of course, but these are like American companies kind of dictating things on a global scale of availability also, which I don't like.
Yes. They are moralizing globally.
If China, any country, right? Any country that I'm not in had an issue with something on Steam, and they had such influence with a company within the country to say, I can't buy something on Steam here due to that, that would suck. So I'm just thinking of anyone outside of America who's like, well, I can't buy Consume Me, right, on Itch just because this American company said it can't be available and now it's gone, right?
Well, I tell you, we do see that. We've seen that with, Fortnite, right? So Fortnite they can't sell sexualized content.
Right.
They can't sell it. And so what has happened is, a lot of the sexualized skins have become desexualized. They stopped selling hypersexualized skins, and those skins are not available in certain things. Like, we do see that.
Yeah.
There is the problem is that the discussion is never authentic, right? Nobody is making this with there's this, I can't think of the term. It's a false premise, essentially, but it's not the
a straw man.
Not quite, but there's a very specific term here that I can't think of. But they will say that these games are about hiding the free speech of the women who are survivors, right? That these games those people who are survivors of rape should have the free speech to say they don't want this, and therefore those games should be removed. And I feel that that is a false equivalence, right? They will say, oh, dehumanization of women should not be acceptable, right? It should not be acceptable. And because these games do that, you are traumatizing these other people, right? Again, I think that is a false equivalence. They are not the same thing. And
I feel like we have a lot of similar conversations like that in modern society. And it's just like one group talking for a whole group when it's a group is not all of the same mindset, I guess.
Well, the spot that my mind also immediately jumped to is, I guess, something that we just touched on, so maybe it's still fresh in our minds, is like, you know, who gets to decide what is and isn't like appropriate for all of this one group to see.
Yeah, remember
for
when
any group, not just one group, just anyone.
This kind of reminds me of this reminds me of the time Facebook had that thing where they were trying to get rid of like all hate speech.
Yeah.
And like they were trying to like quantify it so they could build an AI to fight against it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they went the complete opposite direction and just said, actually, you know what? Never mind. Just go completely the other direction and just allow anything on the platform.
Mm.
Yes. So, boy, there is this argument that you can't be tolerant of intolerance, right? And that is because intolerance naturally will stamp out tolerance over time, right? So if you want to be tolerant, you have to always be intolerant of intolerance, because intolerance will naturally remove and replace tolerance, right? And that is something that when we're talking about like a hate speech, right, you can't allow that because it will eventually become hate speech everywhere, right? Like it will spread and it will become a thing. You can't allow for a Nazi to exist because then they will create Nazis, right? Mm-hmm. And Nazis inevitably lead to the death of not Nazis. There is no outcome where you can allow a Nazi and be tolerant of a Nazi, because no matter what, they will lead to more Nazis, which will lead to bad things for not Nazis, right? Mm-hmm. Like that is the thought process behind you can't always be tolerant.
I mean, something we've also learned about Nazis is they are one spot less than Donkey Kong on the top 100 villains list in IGN.
Yes, that is also true. Yes, Nazis are not as bad as
Donkey Kong.
Yes. And we shouldn't allow Donkey Kong either, right? Like that's the important part.
So like, is pretty good.
There is that sort of that sort of concept, yes, with like hate speech and hate in general. Hate, right? Hate. Sex, pornography, violence even, right? Like, unless we're going with that sort of concept that you can't have violence without hate, that it's always hate, right? In which case you can't have a hate crime, right? You can't do that because all crime has hate. If you're going in that route, or unless you're going in that route, then the argument can be made that that is not the same, right? That having moderation on Facebook of people saying slurs and posting all of this, you know, horrific hatred that is intended to, dog whistle and grow and build so that it can lead to the death of a people, right? Yeah. Is not the same as a video game about, violence.
Anorexia.
Well, not even that. Like just taking that bad one and saying that even then, it's not necessarily. If you have violence towards women and you have dehumanization of women, yes, that is bad, and that is something that you don't want to support and promote. But is it the same? It gets really squiffy up in there, like it's a really difficult thing where like the line is so thin and so razor sharp, right? That it really does just become, are you okay with the fact that things you don't like exist and are sold and people are sexually gratifying themselves to these things?
Someone's profiting off of it.
Oh, yeah. Did I break? I think I broke.
And spreading, the idea out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's something that
did I break there? Because I think I broke for a bit.
You did on our end.
The show must go on. The show must go on.
Well, we'll hear it in the.
It'll be edited
in the
out.
audio version. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll hear it out in the audio version, and this part will disappear because Chris is so good at that.
Yes.
But yeah, no, it just that's where I'm like, if you're trying to do this the quote unquote right way, it would require someone sitting down and literally looking at every single case where this is a thing.
They become the arbiter, right? That's
exactly.
the problem, is they become the arbiter. So it really does. Halo. And the thing that I feel like this is the crux of kind of all of maybe politics for me, right? Is, are you okay with something you don't like existing? Are you okay with that? Right? And I'm fine with the fact that I don't agree with that thing and that it is still something other people like, right? Like I'm going to make it as ridiculous as possible. Okay. I think Marvel films suck. They're so bad, right?
What?
Like there hasn't been a good Marvel movie.
Check out my pants.
Iron Man, right? Like this is not a lot of good. This is not a lot of good. Okay. Arguing that Marvel shouldn't be allowed to make movies anymore. And not only that they shouldn't be allowed to sell or monetize any of their Marvel stuff anymore. Because I don't like it. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's good. Right? I think that
it would also be the same thing if like you went up to Marvel and you said, "Hey, please don't make them," and they said kick rocks. So then you went around and talked
you go in and you say, "Okay, now
Visa and
they
Mastercard.
Can't make money. If they sell a Marvel product,
see.
They can't make money anymore."
That is really the crux of the issue that I have is why does
Oh my god. It's the full grown person equivalent of mom said no, I'm gonna go ask dad.
Yep. Like actually.
Yeah. But, with trillions of dollars on the line because Visa and Mastercard push that kind of money around. So it's really difficult because we're not going to come up to a solution here.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you tuned into this podcast wondering if you were going to have an answer to the question that we are posing.
We're not solving peace in the Middle East. I have no solution for you, right? Like I can't make Ukraine stop. I cannot do these
Crub
things.
would be the most likely to solve the crisis in the Middle East.
I mean, I did go to the United States Institute of Peace, right? Like that is where I went to school.
You've been trying.
Wait, where'd you go to school?
The United States Institute of Peace.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I did to become a diplomat. So probably actually,
there's something
I could come up
really
with some solutions.
There's something very, very interesting. There's
one
something
thing that really funny about
I've never once heard you talk about that part of your life.
Yeah,
I did my
thesis. Fascinating.
I did my thesis.
You were
gonna
be an ambassador?
I'm still weighing if this is real or if he's just stringing us along now.
No, it's absolutely real.
This feels so personal that I'm like, there's no way he'd let this information be public.
It's okay. Nobody's gonna find me from it. But yeah, fair. I did, and I did my thesis on Rwanda and the Hutus and the Tutsis.
Really?
And yeah.
Oh, I do know about the Hutus and the Tutsis. Yeah.
I wish I knew about this. We would have had so much more to talk about when you held me hostage.
Yeah, well, I have.
Well, that hostage situation was on a razor's edge.
So was I.
Well, yeah.
Just imagine Trav tied up in a chair. What about your thesis? How could you do this?
I'm just saying, there's a reason why Trav keeps the hair down, right? And it's to hide the ears that was chopped off.
Wow.
Oh, that makes sense. There's a reason why Trav is wearing over-ear headphones right now.
I agreed to do this podcast because you said he wouldn't tell anyone.
Speaking of which, go watch Reservoir Dogs if you did not understand anything that I just said.
If that seemed incredibly violent and out of nowhere.
Yeah, go watch Reservoir Dogs. Yeah, so I don't know, man. There's just not a whole lot of great...
There's not really a good takeaway from this. Yeah, there's not really a good takeaway from this either. It's just kind of sucks.
Yeah.
At the risk of getting incredibly libbed TF up, I feel like the best thing to do is just, talk about it, make sure people are aware of this example, and that it's not just, hey, look, incest game is bad, which, yeah, of course, you know, yeah, sure,
Kinda
we can grandstand against incest game, but they're using it as a launch pad to just, you know, control the narrative, control everything, and to label anyone against them as incestuous rapists.
Because it's not hard to imagine this going to things that are quite normalized to a lot of us, right? Like, which one of the PS2 God of War games has Kratos just nonchalantly doing terrible things as you mash QuickTime events to it? You know, put that in front of a group like this, and they're probably like, yeah, that's got to go. You know?
The only one I know of is when he's having consensual sex, and I don't think that's the one you're talking about.
I mean, that's sex on
screen.
Yeah.
Oh, you're
sex on screen.
I see.
Ban
I see.
it.
Yeah, that's not
Ban
okay.
it.
That's
Get it
not
out
okay.
of here. Visa,
dude. They have
Visa,
like a kid. They have a kid in the later games. You can't do that.
There's a dong in Baldur's Gate 3, probably.
I mean,
the one I saw today was like, I think no bestiality content was part of like an itch.
Oh, I thought you said the dong update you saw today, and I was like, where?
No, I'll talk about that in our post show. But I did see itch put out some updated guidelines, and I think bestiality was on it. And I'm like, can't you do like a bear or wolf or something in Baldur's Gate 3? Isn't that a thing?
Yeah, you're one of your partners that you can romance turns into a bear because they could like animals shapeshift.
Which would no longer be allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get it out. No Baldur's Gate 3 anymore.
Dude, is Sims not allowed?
You know?
That's a great question. Is the Sims allowed?
Are these Christian
Am I not allowed to
motherfuckers going to tell me I can't? Woohoo!
And that's part of the thing, right? Like, we're talking about it humorously, but these examples are kind of where this could go if unchecked.
It's not far. It's one step away. It's one step. Like, it's one
absolutely
step. Right? Like, it's not hard to go from, okay, you can't have, or it is going to be anti-pornography to, okay, now it's going to be anti-obscenity. And, well, what is obscene, right? What is an obscenity? Well, I don't like that. That's obscene. And then it's all about, just control at that point. Mm-hmm. And
then they're going to get to the point where the only thing that they allow is the cross in the Bible.
Again, not to be too, political about it, but there is a certain amount of that is sort of inherent in it. And I don't know that I have a good answer there, other than maybe it shouldn't be for them to decide. And, boy, I don't think they should be.
I was say, whatever happened to let people decide with their wallet? I guess you've literally made them decide with their wallet because they're not allowed to use any of the cards in their wallet anymore to buy the games that they want to.
In fact, we don't accept a blue MasterCard anymore. Today's a red MasterCard day.
Like, there's stuff today I personally wouldn't want to play and experience, right? But maybe someone would find more artistic merit in some of it than me. Maybe
you're like, I'm not playing Bloodborne.
I'm not playing Bloodborne. Are you playing Bloodborne?
So
Chad?
In fact, I think that they should just not release it, and maybe they should just take it down from PS4.
Hey, I got some great news for you.
They did try to censor violence at one point. We had Bill Clinton doing his whole thing where he was trying to remove games like Kingpin and
wait, what?
Night Trap.
They wanted to remove Night Trap because Night Trap was, when
was this?
Women. 1998 or something.
Oh, okay.
It was when the ESRB was created, basically.
Yeah, it was
around that time.
Of, Mortal Kombat, Night Trap, games like Kingpin, and all these other things where they are showing extreme violence. We had times where Doom was blamed for everything.
I was just about to make a joke like, all right, but help me understand this. Where does Doom fit into this? And then you just beat me to it.
Doom was part of that. Doom was blamed for Columbine. Like,
yeah,
it's a common thing, and now we still have this very puritanical relationship in American culture. Sex is bad and nudity is bad, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? Which is why, boy,
I think no one should have sex, actually.
Well,
I mean, you said it, not me.